So in mental toughness training, one of the things we teach is there's 3 levels of thinking. There's positive thinking, there's negative thinking, and there's critical thinking. Of course, positive thinking is, we've all heard of that, right? We all know what positive thinking is. It's emotionally charged thinking that directs itself toward positive things, positive thoughts. Negative thinking, of course, the opposite, emotionally charged thinking toward the negative side. A critical thinking, of course, is the highest level of thinking where you're thinking unemotionally. It's thinking devoid of any emotion. It's based on facts, data, evidence, proof, etc. So it's the highest level of thinking. Here's the problem when we survey corporate teams, as we have for 25 years. This is the real issue. It's an issue in society, but it's also an issue in big business and small business. So for the last 25 years, we've been surveying sales teams around the world for the Mental Toughness University program. And one of the things we ask them is, what is the highest level of thinking, positive, negative, or critical? And 85% of the people say positive thinking. Of course, the highest level by far is critical thinking, and the reason is because critical thinking has no emotion to it, so it's clear, directed, evidence-based thinking, as opposed to emotionally charged thinking, where our emotions take over our sense of logic. Okay, positive thinking is a wonderful thing. I don't think I have to talk about the great things about positive thinking. It can also get you killed, literally killed. I will give you an example. A few years ago, I was speaking at the international convention. It was the European National Convention, technically, for Ingersol-Rands, of course, the corporate mega giant. And I was speaking on mental toughness and critical thinking in Lisbon, Portugal. I'd never been to Portugal before, and so my wife came with me, and we made kind of a trip out of it. Wanted to see Lisbon, that type of thing. So we were getting ready, and the first night we got there, got to the hotel, and it's kind of a hilly area of downtown Lisbon. And so we went to the concierge at the hotel and asked him for the shopping district, because we kind of wanted to look around, that type of thing. And so they said, "Oh, it's right down the hill. All you have to do is walk down the hill. It's a nice walk, but it is a pretty decent sized hill. So be aware of that." The sun probably had another half hour or so, then it would be dark. So I thought, let's get down there, before it gets really dark. But I figured it'd be pretty lit, in a major city like Lisbon. So long story short, my wife and I walked down the hill. It was beautiful down there. We started to see some of the stores, the shopping district, that type of thing. And my wife was looking in some of the windows of the stores, and I looked over to my left, and I noticed these 3 guys that looked very, very suspicious. And if you've done any travel in your life, or you've lived in a big city or multiple big cities, you know what that looks like. You can sense trouble a mile away in a big city. If you live in the suburbs, I don't think it's as obvious, but when you travel, or when you've been in cities, you can sort of see you have to be very careful. There can be some very sketchy, individuals in cities. And I saw these 3 guys, and they looked like they were probably in their mid-20s or whatever, and they were kind of looking back. These looked like people, and the bottom line to me, that could possibly be a threat to us. Maybe they wanted to rob us. And remember, we walked down a hill to the shopping district. Not a giant hill, but a hill that was steep enough where it would be very difficult to run away. Again, these guys were probably in their mid-20s, maybe 30. And my wife was really taken with the shopping and everything. She's looking in the windows and having a good time. Again, we'd never been to Lisbon. It's a beautiful city. And I kept watching these guys out of the corner of my eye, and they kept looking at us. And I thought, this could be a problem. And of course, as you do, I looked up the hill thinking, we can't outrun them, especially up a hill. That could be a real issue. Then I started looking around and noticing there really wasn't anyone around. There were a few people here and there, but just on their own. And it was starting to get a little bit, it was dusk. It was starting to get a little darker, and I thought, I could have a real problem here. I might be able to run up that hill and get away, but my wife won't be able to run up that fast. There's no way. And those guys are pretty young, and they kept looking, and then they started moving closer. And they were still, a good 50 feet away, but I thought, you know what, it's probably not an issue, but why? Because I'm a positive thinker. And that's what positive thinkers do. They think, let's look for the good in people. Let's look for the positive, I mean, we're here in Lisbon. It's beautiful. You've never been here. I'm about to give a speech, and I'm the keynote speaker at their European International Convention. They brought me all the way from the United States. There we flew over there, first class, and they were treating us real well. Give us a suite at the hotel, etc. And so it was really nice. And positive thinking would have you thinking, gee, don't be so paranoid. Don't be so negative, right? Well, positive thinking can get you killed, because the darker it was getting just over the next 5 or 10 minutes, the more I'm realizing this would be an easy robbery and maybe worse. And I'm not sure. And the stores started to close as well. What I didn't know is they started to close at dark in downtown Lisbon. And so I thought, we better start moving. So I went over to my wife. I said, we need to go back. And she's like, what do you mean? We just got here. I just want to look in the windows. And she just didn't. She didn't really notice those 3 guys. And she was, again, thinking about shopping. And she's a positive thinker as well. So she's having a good time. She's like, I'm having fun. And I'm not sure we'll get a chance to come back. You're giving the speech. And, we got to meet with the people and have the dinner, at the convention with the people. And we got to do a book signing. And not sure. I was doing television in Lisbon as well. She's, we're pretty busy. I just want to just look in a few shops. Come on. And I said, no, we need to go. And I didn't want to make her nervous, because those guys were creeping closer. And if you've ever had anyone who you thought was going to rob you in a city, you can kind of tell you can just sort of get a feeling about it. It's sort of an intuitive feeling, but they just looked dangerous to me. Maybe they weren't. They might have been the nicest people in the world. Who knows, right? But I said, we need to go. We need to start walking back up the hill. And so we did. So she didn't really get it, but I didn't want to scare her, so I didn't say anything, because it was a pretty... it was going to take like 10, 12 minutes to get up that hill. And so I thought, I don't want to make her scared for no reason. Let's just get up the hill and get back to the hotel, which was right at the top of the hill. So I said, we need to go now. And she looked at me, and when I do that, we've been together for a long time. And she knows that voice. And she goes, okay, fine, let's go. So we started walking up the hill, and I'm pushing her to go faster. She's like, come on, stop pushing me. Why are you pushing me? And I said, we need to go. We need to go now. Come on, let's go. And they followed us. And they were still at a distance, but they were following us. And I'm trying to get her to walk faster, and I'm walking faster. I didn't want to tell her. Finally, I grabbed her, by her clothes or coat, and I started kind of pushing her up the hill. She was, pulling her up the hill. She said, "What are you doing?" I said, "We need to go to the hotel right now." And I said, I think that this is a really good idea. There's some people around. I don't really. And she turned around. She saw him coming, walking up toward us, and she's like, "Okay, let's go." So we started walking faster. They started walking faster. They got closer. They were within about 15 or 20 feet of us. We got to the top of the hill, and boom, the hotel was right there. And I go across the street, and it was a busy street there between us and the hotel. Anyway, we crossed the street, and I don't know that we got away, but it felt like we got away, because they didn't cross the street, but they were right on the edge of the street. And then they turned around. We got in the hotel lobby. We looked out the window. They turned around and walked back down the hill. So maybe that's just paranoia. Maybe you're thinking, gee, Steve, relax. Maybe. Could we have gone into one of the stores? Possibly, but they were closing. And so I was worried about that. Here's my point. If I would have taken who knows what would have happened? Maybe nothing would have happened, right? But if you take a positive thinking approach with everything, you can end up getting killed. Literally, you can end up getting killed. You can get yourself in very bad positions. You can get yourself in a bad financial position because you're so positive about the future of your business or the future of your career, or some gamble you're taking in an investment, for example, which people do all the time. They say, well, positive thinking, we'll make the money back if we lose it. Well, what if you don't? I would say that positive thinking is a wonderful thing. Use it sparingly. Be careful. Negative thinking is what I employed there, and I would make the argument that I employed critical thinking. Again, maybe I overreacted, but we didn't get robbed, and maybe we wouldn't have gotten robbed. Who knows? But that's why we teach critical thinking skills, to say there are certain situations. Hey, I love being positive. I bet you do too. It's fun being positive, seeing all the great things, wonderful qualities about people, wonderful qualities about the world and life and all these great things. And it has value. There's no question. When your life is not at risk, or something major is not at risk, I would suggest at least considering positive thinking, because it makes you feel good. It's a drug almost, right? It just really makes you feel good about everything, good about life in the world and all those things around, right? But negative thinking can save your life, and critical thinking is even higher because it's not emotionally charged. Critical thinking, when you're looking at things through the eyes of logic as opposed to emotion, is the highest level. And I've taught critical thinking skills for some of the biggest executive teams in corporate America, as well as other countries, like I did for Ingersol-Rands in Portugal that time. And this is what we teach, whether it's in business, life, or anything else. Critical thinking is the highest level, even though positive thinking is a wonderful thing. Something to think about.